Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we're really getting our hands dirty, metaphorically speaking, looking into decorative wall art. Imagine taking just a plain wall and turning it into something, well, stunning, something with real texture, real dimension. We found this fantastic video source from the Real Decor channel. It walks through this amazing DIY technique, creating these beautiful volumetric wall panels using just stencils and plaster. So our mission today, pull out all the key info from that video, make it super clear how you can do this yourself, turn a simple wall into, a real piece of art. Forget those super complicated methods. This is all about making sophisticated home decor feel, well, accessible and actually enjoyable. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's find the magic behind these wall designs.
Yeah, and what's really great here is exactly that accessibility you mentioned. The creator and the video, they really simplify a process that, might look quite intimidating at first glance. They just break it down into these really achievable steps. Feels like anyone could try it, really, regardless of prior experience.
Right. Sort of democratizes it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyone can add that unique touch. So, okay, getting practical. Where do we start? The foundation is key for any art, right? And the source definitely talks about prep.
Absolutely. First things first, priming the wall. That's step one. The creator specifically recommends using a primer with quartz sand for the best results, apparently.
Quartz sand, why that specifically?
Well, it's not just for show. It seriously enhances adhesion. Make sure everything you put on top, the plaster, the paint, it sticks properly, won't flake off later. Plus, that little bit of grit gives the plaster even more to grab onto. Helps keep the wall strong and smooth underneath it all.
Okay, makes sense. What if you can't find that exact primer, though?
Yeah, good question. The source does say if the quartz sand type isn't available, any decent, deep penetrating primer will do the job. It's about creating that strong bond. You really can't skip this step if you want it to last.
Gotcha. Primer first.
Yeah.
So once that's dry, we move on to the plaster itself, the base layer. The video mentions something interesting, like it doesn't need to be perfectly smooth.
Yeah, it's quite refreshing, isn't it? You don't need to be a pro plasterer for this first coat. The advice is basically just get it on there, cover the whole wall as best you can, make it fairly uniform.
Why is that?
Because this layer is really just the foundation for the raised designs that come later, it gives them something consistent to sit on. It takes away that pressure of needing a flawless finish on this bit, which, let's be honest, is a relief for most DIYers.
Okay. That definitely lowers the stress level.
But this leads to something absolutely critical. This could save you a lot of headaches. The type of spackle or plaster you choose, it's hugely important for this technique.
Ah, right. Not all plasters are the same.
Exactly. For getting that thickness, that volume, you must use what's called starting spackle, or maybe building plaster. The source is really clear. Don't use finished spackle for this part.
Why not? What's the difference?
Well, finished spackle is made for thin, smooth layers. Skimming, no more than maybe 2 millimeters thick. It dries really slowly if you put it on thick, and worse, it's very likely to crack or crumble. It just can't handle the bulk.
Okay, that sounds like a disaster waiting to happen.
Totally. Whereas starting spackle, it's designed for this. It can handle a single layer up to like 3 to 5 centimeters thick.
Wow, that's quite a difference.
It is, and that thickness is what gives you that really noticeable 3D effect, makes the designs pop. It's a good lesson, actually, for any project, isn't it? Know your materials. Using the wrong stuff can just ruin everything.
So true. Okay, canvas prepped, right primer, right starting plaster for the base. Now for the fun part, the designs. How do we actually make these things? The video made the stencils look surprisingly simple.
Yeah, this is where the creativity really kicks in, and it is simple. You can literally just draw your designs. The example used kitchen things like cups and saucers, drawn on plain A4 paper. Or if you're not confident drawing, you could trace images from a computer screen. Find something online you like. Easy peasy.
Okay, paper design done. Then what? How does that become a stencil you can use with plaster?
Right, so you take your paper drawing and you stick it onto a piece of cardboard. About 4 millimeters thick is what they recommend.
Why 4 millimeters specifically?
That thickness is the key. It's what gives the final plaster design its height off the wall, that noticeable, touchable volume. Double-sided tape works fine to stick the paper on.
Then just cut it out.
Yep, grab a sharp utility knife and carefully cut out your design. Follow the lines. But here's a practical tip from the video. These cardboard stencils, they're usually only good for 1 or 2 uses.
Oh, really? Why is that?
The moisture from the plaster makes the cardboard go soft and flimsy pretty quickly. It loses its shape.
Ah, okay, so you need to make all your stencils before you start plastering the designs.
Exactly. Plan ahead. Make enough for the whole wall so you're not caught out halfway through. Keeps things consistent too.
Good tip. Planning is key. So, stencils cut, plaster mixed. How do you get the design onto the wall? This is the magic moment, right?
It really is satisfying. You take your stencil, place it on the wall where you want the design. You can just hold it steady by hand if it's small, or use a bit of double-sided tape to keep it in place if it's bigger or you need both hands.
Okay.
Then you take that starting spackle, the thick stuff, and apply it right over the stencil. Fill in the cutout shape completely, make it level with the stencil top.
And then?
And then, the big reveal. Carefully pull the stencil away from the wall and boom! Your raised design is left right there.
Instant art. That sounds amazing.
It is, but a really important warning from the source.
Don't touch it.
Exactly. Resist the temptation to fiddle with it while it's wet. Let it dry. It actually starts to dry quite fast on the wall, maybe initial set in 30 minutes or so, because the wall pulls the moisture out. You might be able to make tiny tweaks then.
Wow.
But for it to get properly hard and stable, you need patience. Don't risk messing up those nice raised edges. Like you said, don't touch.
Makes perfect sense. Let it cure.
Yeah.
Okay, so designs are on the wall, they're dry. Now what? Refining them. Smoothing edges.
Yep. Once they're fully dry, it's time for refinement. Just gently smooth off any rough edges or little burrs that might have formed.
How do you do that? Special tool.
You can use a small spatula, sure, but get this, the creator even suggests using the edge or the handle or even the back of a regular teaspoon.
A teaspoon. Seriously?
Seriously, just for gently smoothing those curves. And if you want it even smoother, you can use sandpaper. But, and this is important, use a fine grit. Nothing coarser than about 180 grit. Otherwise, you might leave noticeable scratches.
Right.
Although the creator also points out that plaster naturally has a bit of texture, and the designs are kind of abstract anyway, so tiny scratches often aren't a big deal. They can even add to the sort of handcrafted character, you know.
I like that. Embracing the imperfection. So designs are smoothed, ready for paint now.
Almost. One more crucial step. Primer again.
Again. Wow, primer really is the hero here.
It really is. Another coat of deep penetrating primer goes over everything. The flat wall, the raised designs. It does the same job as before. Seals the plaster so it doesn't just drink up your paint. Ensures good paint adhesion. Gives you a uniform surface.
Okay.
And here's a neat little trick from the video. You can actually tint this primer slightly. Maybe add a touch of yellow or some warm tone. It gives the subtle undertone to the whole wall before the main color goes on. Adds a bit of depth.
Oh, that's clever, like an underpainting.
Exactly, and remember how to apply it. This primer and the base paint later, you have to use a brush. The source mentions a Makvitsa brush, which is basically a wide, blocky brush. Good for textured surfaces.
Why not a roller? Rollers are usually faster.
Because of the raised designs, a roller would just flatten the wet plaster if you did it too soon, or it would just skip over the texture and miss loads of spots between the designs. You need bristles to get into all the nooks and crannies.
Ah, of course. Makes total sense.
Oh.
Okay, primed again. Now finally, the color. This must be the really fun part.
Definitely. This is where it all comes together visually. First step is a base coat of acrylic paint over the entire wall, designs included. The advice is to dilute the acrylic paint a bit for this coat, maybe with about 30% water.
Why diluted?
It just helps it flow better into the plaster texture, gets better coverage on that first pass. And again, apply it with that brush, making sure you cover everything.
So that gives you one solid background color.
Yep, sets the stage.
And then bringing the individual designs like the teacups in the video to life. How does that work?
So this is the really artistic bit, but again, super accessible. The creator suggests pouring small amounts of acrylic paint, say 50 to 100 mils, into little containers. For this part, you don't dilute it much, maybe just 10% water tops. You want that color nice and rich.
Right.
Then you tint these little batches. Add your colors, blues, reds, yellows, whatever fits your design. Mix them up.
So you have little pots of different colors ready.
Exactly. Then you grab a small brush, like an artist's brush, and you just paint your designs.
Yeah.
Paint the teacups blue, the saucers yellow, or whatever you've created.
The video made that look really relaxing, like just enjoying the process.
Totally. The creator described it as enjoyable, unhurried, almost like being a kid again with paints. And the best part, no need to stress about being perfect.
Yeah. What if you mess up? Go over the lines.
Easy fix. If you put on too much paint or it drips, you can often just wipe it off immediately with a damp sponge if you're quick. Or if it's dried a bit, you can lightly sand it down once it's fully dry and try again. It's super forgiving.
That's brilliant. So you don't need to be a trained artist at all.
Not at all. It takes the pressure off. It's more about enjoying the creative flow, knowing you can easily correct things. That forgiving nature is key.
It really is. That theme runs through the whole technique, doesn't it? Accessibility, ease.
Definitely.
Okay, so beyond the steps themselves, what other practical things does the source mention? I heard it's actually quite cheap to do.
Oh yeah, that's a big plus. Plaster itself is very affordable, so you get this really high-end custom look without spending a fortune. Great for budget decorating.
And is it durable? How does it hold up over time?
Surprisingly well once everything is fully cured. The combination of primer, plaster, paint, maybe even lacquer, it creates a pretty tough surface. And if life happens and a little edge gets chipped somehow,
Yeah. Is it hard to fix?
not at all. That's the beauty of the texture. Unlike a smooth wall where a patch stands out, here it's easy. Just mix a tiny bit of that starting plaster, fill the chip, smooth it gently, let it dry, dab on some matching paint. It just blends right in, almost invisible.
That's fantastic. Especially if you have kids or pets, maybe.
Exactly. And we talked about the kitchen example, but the versatility is huge.
Right, you could do this anywhere.
Absolutely. Living room with, abstract shapes, hallway with a subtle pattern, a kid's room with, clouds or stars.
Oh, cute nursery designs.
Yeah. Fairy tale characters, maybe, soft colors, or elegant geometric patterns for a more modern look. It adapts to any style, really.
So versatile. Now, for anyone listening who's thinking, okay, I want to try this, any tips on planning materials?
Yes, definitely calculate what you need beforehand. The source mentions this. Plaster bags, paint cans, they usually tell you the coverage per square meter. Work it out for your wall size.
Good advice. Stops you running out halfway through or buying way too much.
Precisely. And speaking of paint, any specific type recommended for the long haul?
Right, because you want it to last and be practical.
The source strongly recommends water-based acrylic or latex paints. Steer clear of solvent-based ones. The fumes aren't pleasant, not great environmentally, and they take longer to dry.
Okay, water-based. Got it.
And crucially, choose a washable paint, especially for kitchens, hallways, kids' rooms, places that get touched or splashed.
Why washable specifically?
Because non-washable paint, if you try to wipe off a mark with a damp cloth, the paint itself can just wipe right off, leaves a faded patch. Washable paint is designed to withstand gentle cleaning.
Ah, that's a really important detail.
Yeah.
Okay, any finishing touches?
Yeah. One final option, once everything is totally dry, you can add a clear acrylic lacquer over the top, gives extra protection, and you can choose matte or glossy depending on the final look you want. Adds durability.
Do you need to prime again before the lacquer?
Nope. No need to prime again. Just apply the lacquer directly over the dried paint. Straightforward final step.
Wow, what a fantastic deep dive. We've gone from a blank wall to this incredible textured, personalized piece of art. From the right primers, this specific plaster type, making stencils, the painting. It really does feel achievable, like the source showed. A great way to make something unique without needing to be a pro artist.
Absolutely. The real beauty here is that mix of simplicity and creative freedom. It's more than just plastering. It's adding that texture, that dimension, that personal story to your wall. It becomes something you made.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for you, listening right now, and your own home?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How could this deep dive change how you see the blank walls around you? What canvas in your own space is just waiting for its own story, maybe brought to life with a volumetric design that you create, adding that depth and personality only something handmade can bring?